"Pretend you're with me," the stranger whispered fiercely to her, sitting utterly alone at the gala wedding. In that instant, an electric current of danger and desire snapped between them, setting the stage for a dramatic, life-altering deception that would change everything they believed about trust and love. Before we dive into their explosive story, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? And don't forget to hit subscribe and leave that like for more stories that grab you by the heart. The ballroom of the St. Regis, New York, pulsed with the discreet power of the city's financial elite. Diamond-dusted chandeliers cast a golden glow over designer gowns and flawless tuxedos, while the low hum of deals and political maneuvers hung in the air like a siren song of ambition. Alexandra. Alex Sterling adjusted her navy blue dress for the 10th time, feeling like a struggling artist shoved onto a Broadway stage. Her fingers nervously twisted the strap of her mother's vintage clutch, the only inheritance she held dear, besides the tenacious drive in her blood. At 28, the financial reporter for the New York Times had never felt more like an outsider. "Why did I agree to this?" she muttered to herself, watching the guests glide past like pieces in a high-stakes million-dollar chess game. That's when he materialized. Grant Lexington appeared like a tailored shadow, moving through the tables with the innate authority of a man born to command. Tall, with broad shoulders encased in a tuxedo that looked less tailored and more sculpted onto his frame, he possessed a gravitational pull that silenced conversations within 10 feet. His dark, intense eyes locked onto Alex's across the room, and an undefined charge, a recognition, a challenge, perhaps even a spark of defiance, passed between them. "May I sit down?" His voice was a low rumble, controlled, but carrying a hidden, sharp edge of urgency. Alex raised an eyebrow, noting he didn't wait for her reply before settling into the chair beside her. "Go right ahead. It is a party, after all. I need a favor." Grant leaned in slightly, and she caught the faint scent of expensive cologne, cedar and spice, powerfully masculine without being overwhelming. "Pretend you're with me." The request was so abrupt, so devoid of niceties, that Alex nearly let out a startled laugh. "Excuse me, that table, over there." He discreetly signaled toward a group of older, formidable women, dripping in jewelry that could have bought Alex's entire apartment building. "My aunt has orchestrated a chance introduction to a friend's daughter. I need an immediate escape route." Alex followed his gaze and spotted a nervous blonde woman in a jarring pink dress, constantly checking her phone. For a fleeting moment, she felt a curious mix of sympathy for both his desperation and the girl's hopeful anticipation. "And why precisely would I do that?" Grant studied her, those dark eyes penetrating, as if attempting to read the very core of her soul. "Because you're also desperately looking for a way out." The blunt observation struck her like a physical blow. It was the absolute, uncomfortable truth. She was here because Julia, the bride and her college best friend, had practically dragged her. Yet, amidst this blinding display of wealth, she felt like a fraud in her single decent dress and torturous heels. "Fine," she sighed, the word an acceptance of a dangerous game. "But you absolutely owe me a full explanation." The slow smile that broke across Grant's face was a revelation, completely transforming his features. For a second, the imposing corporate executive dissolved, leaving behind a man overcome with genuine relief. "Grant Lexington," he offered, extending a long-fingered hand. "Alexandra Sterling." The handshake lasted a beat too long, and Alex registered the slight moisture on his palm. Nervous? Impossible. Men of his stature never broke composure. For the next hour, they embodied the role of a deeply involved couple with an ease that shocked them both. Grant was a mesmerizing conversationalist, effortlessly discussing Renaissance art and modern philosophy. When he casually mentioned he'd read her last investigative piece on the tech market, Alex felt a wave of unexpected heat rise to her cheeks. You read my article?" she asked, a thread of genuine surprise in her voice. "I track the American financial landscape relentlessly. Your work is incisive and, frankly, impressive." The sincere admiration in his tone completely disarmed her. When was the last time anyone had complimented her professional skill without ulterior motives? When the live band shifted tempo and couples drifted toward the dance floor, Grant extended his arm. "Shall we maintain the performance?" On the dance floor, his lead was practiced and smooth, hinting at years of obligatory social graces. His hands were firm, respectful, yet the intimacy of their synchronized movement made Alex's pulse quicken. "Thank you," he murmured near her ear as they swayed. "You've completely saved my evening." "Why, though?" she whispered back, looking up at him. "Why the struggle to say no to your family?" A sudden shadow passed through his dark eyes. "Because family expectations are gilded cages, beautiful, valuable, but they are still designed to keep you trapped." The music ended, but they remained still for a few seconds, studying each other as if attempting to solve a sudden, complex puzzle. "Alex," his voice dropped lower, becoming intimately quiet. "I know this sounds completely absurd, but would you consider having dinner with me? No pretending, no performance." Before she could form a reply, an elegantly dressed woman in her late 50s approached, her smile polite but devoid of genuine warmth. "Grant, darling, I've been searching for you everywhere." His body instantly tensed, and Alex saw the executive mask snap back into place. "And Helena, and this must be..." The woman's gaze swept over Alex, a clinical, top-to-bottom assessment that made Alex feel like a specimen under a microscope. "Alexandra Sterling, my girlfriend." The word girlfriend was delivered with such conviction that for a moment Alex felt herself actually believe it. Grant's arm locked possessively around her waist, and she had to consciously remember to breathe. "How marvelous," Helena chirped, but her tone suggested the exact opposite. "And what do you do, dear?" "I'm a reporter. I work for the New York Times." The silence that followed was deafening. Alex could almost hear Helena's brain struggling to compute that information and violently rejecting the conclusion. "How interesting." That was all she managed before making a quick, stiff excuse to depart. Grant let out a deep, low chuckle. "I believe you've successfully terrified half of the Upper East Side. I apologize if I wasn't the pre-approved type of woman they expected for you." Alex's retort was sharper than she intended. "No," he said, turning her to face him again, the playful smile gone. "You are exactly the type of woman I need in my life." The sheer intensity in his gaze made her heart vault in her chest. A fierce, unstated promise hung in the air. But the chilling reality quickly settled over her. This was Grant Lexington, the heir to a national conglomerate, a man who dated models and heiresses. And she? She was a resourceful, middle-class journalist who still split the rent on her Brooklyn apartment. "I need to leave," she said abruptly, grabbing her purse. "Alex, wait." But she was already walking away, fighting the desperate urge to look back. She knew if she caught that confused, almost pleading vulnerability in his eyes one last time, she would lose all control. Outside the Grand Hotel, waiting for a cab, Alex couldn't stop replaying the depth in his eyes. It was a depth that contrasted starkly with the polished superficiality of his world. Her phone vibrated. A text from an unknown number. "Thank you for tonight. You made the deception feel more real than any truth I've lived." Gee. Alex stared at the message for several minutes, her finger hovering over the screen. Then, she made a quiet, definitive choice that she knew would shape her future. She deleted the number without a reply. 3 days later, he found her. And this time, running away would prove impossible. The Dumbo coffee shop in Brooklyn was electric with the typical energy of a Thursday afternoon. Alex occupied her usual table by the window, laptop open, fingers flying as she finalized a report on market volatility. The rich scent of roasted coffee beans mingled with the animated buzz of young entrepreneurs and tech workers. She was so engrossed in her work that she barely noticed the shadow fall over her table. "May I sit down?" Alex looked up and felt the world momentarily pause. Grant Lexington was standing there, effortlessly impeccable, in a sleek charcoal suit that must have cost more than her annual salary. Yet his posture seemed subtly different, less commanding, more vulnerable. "How did you find me?" The question slipped out without permission. It wasn't a puzzle. "You mentioned working at the Times newsroom, and this shop is directly on the most common subway route between your office and Brooklyn." He offered a small, tired smile, and she noticed faint lines around his eyes she hadn't registered before. "May I sit down, or will you bolt again?" The directness of the challenge caught her off guard. Alex gestured to the chair opposite her, slowly closing her laptop. Several people in the cafe were now discreetly staring. Grant Lexington was not a man one simply failed to notice. "2 black coffees, please," he told the passing barista, who quickly recognized him. "And perhaps a couple of those chocolate croissants." "You don't need to buy me anything." "I do, actually. First, because I owe you at least a dozen coffees after using you as a human shield at the wedding. Second, because we have something important to discuss." Alex crossed her arms, a defensive posture he immediately observed. "About what?" "About an idea that might sound insane, but I believe would benefit us both." The coffee arrived, and Grant waited until they were alone again before continuing, his fingers tapping a restless rhythm on the tabletop. The first true sign of strain she had ever witnessed. "I need a girlfriend," he stated simply. Alex nearly spat out her coffee. "Excuse me? Not a real one, obviously," he rushed to clarify, though she wasn't sure if she felt relieved or insulted by the distinction. "A strategic partner, someone to attend social events with me, someone to make me look stable." "Stable?" Alex tilted her head, genuinely perplexed. Grant sighed, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair in a gesture that finally messed up his pristine look. "You know who I am? I know you're Grant Lexington, and your family has enough liquid capital to buy and sell half of this city." A bitter curve touched his lips. "CEO of the Lexington Group, the youngest in the company's history. 32 years old, single, 0 public romantic attachments in 3 years. To the board and investors, that profile screams unreliable risk. Someone who can't be trusted with the company's future." Alex studied him. "And you genuinely believe that?" "What I believe is irrelevant. What they believe is everything." Grant leaned forward, the intensity in his dark eyes burning. "I have a crucial due diligence meeting next week with key Japanese investors. They are extremely traditional. They prioritize family stability and permanence. A single, adult, unattached man at 32 is to them a sign of fundamental lack of commitment. And you want me to be my strategic girlfriend for 6 weeks, show up with me at a few key events, business dinners, maybe a charity gala or 2. He paused, his voice softening slightly. "In exchange, I can offer significant financial compensation." "No." The refusal was quicker and firmer than Alex had planned. Grant looked genuinely stunned. "You didn't even hear the number." "I don't need to. I am not a paid escort, Mr. Lexington." She began to slide her laptop into her bag, but his hand lightly covered hers. "Please just hear me out." There was an urgent sincerity in his voice that transcended mere business, making her halt. Their eyes met, and she glimpsed past the mask of the powerful executive to see a man genuinely requesting help. 5 minutes, she conceded. "It's not about the money. At least, not just about the money." Grant leaned back. 3 years ago, my father passed away suddenly. I was executive VP, being groomed, but no one expected me to take the helm so soon. Alex felt a flicker of sympathy in her chest. I'm sorry for your loss. Thank you. He nodded briefly. The problem is, since then, my life has been nothing but work. 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. I have no personal life, no stable relationships, nothing outside the conglomerate. And that signals a massive instability to the shareholders. They want someone who can manage emotional responsibility, someone who can form lasting bonds outside of quarterly reports. Alex processed the information slowly. And you think hiring a fake girlfriend is the solution? I thought that pretending to have one would buy me the time I need to figure out how to find a real one, he admitted, the raw honesty of the confession catching her off guard. A silence fell, punctuated only by the clatter of the busy coffee shop. Alex observed Grant, the constant tension in his shoulders, the way his eyes perpetually scanned the room, always on high alert. Why me? She finally asked. Because you want absolutely nothing from me. The answer was immediate, delivered without a hint of calculation. Every woman in my world wants status, money, connections. You were the first person in years to actively try to get away from me. Alex felt the color rise in her cheeks. I didn't try to get away. Yes, you did, and it was genuinely refreshing. Grant leaned forward again. Besides, you're brilliant, articulate, and highly respected. You would be a convincing partner. What specific events are we talking about? Alex couldn't believe she was even considering this dangerous tightrope walk. But something about his vulnerability, combined with her journalistic curiosity about the man behind the myth, held her captive. Mainly business dinners, a few social obligations, charity events, that sort of high-profile function. Grant pulled a heavy card from his inside pocket. I am not asking you to pretend you're in love. Just be yourself. Smart, challenging, real. Alex took the card, feeling the weight of the thick stock. And for how long? 6 weeks, until the Japanese deal closes. After that, you return to your life, and I will attempt to build one of my own. There was a profound, almost heartbreaking melancholy in his voice, as if he recognized he possessed everything of value, and yet nothing at all. I need time to think, Alex finally stated. Of course. Grant rose, placing a bill on the table that would cover the entire cafe's supply of croissants. My number is on the card, if you decide to accept, or if you simply need to talk. He started to walk away, then stopped and looked back. Alex? Yes? Thank you for listening. It's been a long time since anyone bothered. She watched him leave, noticing how others tracked his presence, how he carried the invisible burden of constant attention. When he was gone, Alex looked at the card. Grant Lexington, CEO Lexington Group. On the back, handwritten in an elegant script, were 2 phone numbers and one single, poignant word. Thanks. Alex slipped the card into her bag, trying to silence the dangerous voice in her head that was already whispering. Yes, because for the first time in years, someone had seen her exactly as she was, a formidable mind, and still chosen her. A week later, Alex stood before the mirror in her small Brooklyn apartment, questioning every illogical decision that led her here. The black dress she'd bought for the occasion, her debut as Grant Lexington's girlfriend, felt both perfectly elegant and disastrously inadequate. Her phone rang, interrupting the spiral of doubt. Are you ready? Grant's voice was softer than usual, tinged with a nervous anticipation she hadn't expected. As ready as anyone can be to run a massive social deception on the Manhattan elite, Alex replied, applying a final steadying coat of lipstick. It's not deception, it's narrative management. She laughed, the sound tight with tension. You are truly dreadful with euphemisms. One of my many charming qualities you'll soon discover, Grant said, a genuine smile audible in his tone. I'm on my way up. 15 minutes later, Alex was in the passenger seat of a black Maybach, watching the evening lights of New York stream past. Grant drove with the same focused, controlled precision he applied to everything, but she caught his fingers drumming a light, nervous rhythm on the steering wheel at stoplights. "Nervous?" she asked. "Cautious," he corrected. "This is the first time I've brought anyone to a major company function in 3 years. Who did you usually bring?" Grant was quiet for a long moment, making Alex think he wouldn't answer. When he finally did, his voice was hushed. "Women my board would approve of. Daughters of partners, fellow heiresses, people who inherently understood the rules of the game." He glanced at her. "None of them were real. And am I? You are the most genuine person I've encountered in 5 years." The sincerity of the confession rendered her speechless. They drove the rest of the way in a silence that was rapidly becoming comfortable, broken only by their arrival at the Museum of Modern Art, MoMA. The museum had been transformed for the black tie charity gala, its glass facade gleaming with golden light, a crowd of immaculate guests converging on the entrance. Flashes from photographers' cameras popped like tiny, frantic stars. "Final chance to call it off," Grant said, but his hand was already on the door handle. Alex took a deep breath, the air cold and sharp. "Let's commit." The moment they stepped from the car, Grant's transformation was instantaneous. Shoulders straight, the political smile in place, he fully inhabited the role of the confident, untouchable CEO. But as he offered his arm, his eyes met hers, and she caught a flicker of the vulnerability that only she was privy to. "Just be yourself," he murmured as they approached the entrance. The first 15 minutes were a blur of quick introductions and tight, polite smiles. Alex was presented simply as Alex Sterling, reporter, and she watched with fascination as each socialite processed the information. Some seemed intrigued. Most were simply confused about how a journalist had breached their inner circle. "Which publication?" asked a stern-looking woman, encased in vintage emeralds. "The New York Times financial section." The woman blinked several times, as if grappling with an incomprehensible foreign concept. How fascinating. Alex realized fascinating was the polite society code word for inappropriate and out of place. "Alex recently published a brilliant analysis of the housing market," Grant interjected smoothly, his hand resting naturally on the small of her back. "It was insightful and rigorously researched." The genuine pride in his voice made Alex's heart thump. When was the last time her professional skill had been lauded at a social event? The evening flowed smoothly until they reached the main exhibit hall. Alex was absorbed, explaining a piece of abstract expressionism to Grant, when a familiar voice cut through the air. "Grant, what a pleasant surprise." They turned to face a polished man in his 40s, with a practiced politician's smile, accompanied by a woman who looked like she'd stepped off a magazine cover. "Edward Rivers," Grant greeted him with a sharp, professional cordiality. "Alex, this is Edward, director of Rivers Capital. Edward, this is Alex Sterling." Alex extended her hand, but Edward barely acknowledged it before focusing entirely on Grant. "I hear you're making moves into green energy, a very intriguing maneuver considering the current market." "We are committed to forward-thinking investments," Grant replied diplomatically. Of course," Edward chuckled, but there was a sharp, predatory look in his eyes. "And you, Alex? How are you adjusting to the world of corporate finance? Must be quite a change from reporting." The condescension in his tone made Alex's blood boil. She offered a tight, sweet smile. "Actually, it's quite similar. Both require the ability to see past the polished surface, ask the uncomfortable questions, and pinpoint precisely when someone is trying to sell a story that doesn't align with the facts." Edward's smile wavered slightly. "What a unique perspective." "Alex has unique perspective on everything," Grant interjected, his hand visibly tightening on her back. "It's one of the qualities I admire most." Edward's companion finally spoke. And how long have you two been seriously involved? Alex felt Grant stiffen beside her. This was the first detail-specific question, and they had no rehearsed story. A few weeks, Alex answered candidly. We met at a friend's wedding, in the city, Grant added. A subtle correction. Ah, a spontaneous wedding romance. The woman sighed dramatically. How utterly romantic. Was it? Alex looked up at Grant, forgetting for a moment they were acting. Unexpected. The best things always are, Grant said softly, his eyes locked solely on hers. For a few charged seconds, the museum noise faded away. The way he looked at her made her stomach drop, as if he were truly recalling a moment of genuine romance, not a convenient lie. Well, Edward cleared his throat loudly. I certainly hope it proves enduring. There was a subtle threat in his words that Alex disliked intensely, but before she could respond, Grant took a small, protective step forward. I have no doubt it will be, he stated with a finality that left no room for further questioning. As Edward and his companion moved off, Alex turned to Grant. He is absolutely charming. Edward views all relationships as strategic transactions, Grant explained. He's likely attempting to determine if you pose a threat to his own business maneuvers. A threat? Me? An intelligent reporter with insider access to the CEO of a major corporation. Grant smiled darkly. You are the very definition of a threat to men like him. Before Alex could respond, the music swelled again, signaling the opening of the dining hall. Grant offered his arm, ready for the next phase of the performance. But as they walked, Alex could not shake the terrifying feeling that what was happening between them was rapidly becoming less of a performance and more of a terrifying, unpredictable reality. And that, more than any Edward Rivers in the world, was what truly scared her. The Avery Fisher Hall at Lincoln Center gleamed under the gold spotlights, its grand architecture ringing with the final, majestic chords of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. Alex closed her eyes, letting the powerful music wash over her as applause erupted all around. When she opened them, she found Grant watching her with an unreadable expression. You really love classical music, he observed as they slowly left their front row seats. My mother brought me here when I was a kid, Alex admitted, adjusting the silk shawl she had borrowed from Julia for the event. She always said classical music was the only form of luxury that didn't depend on money, only a willingness to feel. Grant stopped in the crowded corridor, forcing people to carefully walk around him. Your mother was wise. Yes, she was a nurse, worked her whole life in a public hospital, died while I was in college. Alex wasn't sure why she was suddenly sharing this. In the 3 weeks of their strategic alliance, they had carefully maintained a buffer of safe, superficial conversations. I'm truly sorry, Grant said, and the genuine grief in his voice surprised her. And your family? You never speak of them outside of your professional obligations. For a moment, she thought he wouldn't answer. They walked in silence through the ornate lobby, past groups of people discussing the performance in hushed, educated tones. My mother was a pianist, Grant finally said when they reached the crisp night air. A true classical virtuoso, like the performance tonight. She used to play for me before bed when I was small. Alex noted he spoke in the past tense. Used to. She passed away when I was 12. Breast cancer. His voice remained controlled, but Alex saw his fists unconsciously clench. My father, he never truly recovered. He buried himself in the company, became even more demanding, more distant. They stopped by the car, but neither moved to get in. The street was quiet, broken only by the distant wash of city traffic. Is that why you work so obsessively? Alex asked softly. Because that's what he did? Grant offered a dry, humorless laugh. Probably. Or perhaps because it's significantly easier than dealing with. He gestured vaguely into the night. With everything else. Feelings? Feelings, he confirmed. Alex studied him in the warm glow of the streetlights. The raw vulnerability in his posture was a stark contradiction to the supremely confident man she had met at the wedding a month prior. "Can I ask you one personal question? More personal than that?" Grant smiled, and this time the warmth reached his eyes. "When was the last time you did something purely because you wanted to? Not for strategy, not for business, not for family obligation. Just because it made you happy?" The question completely blindsided him. She watched him try to formulate an answer and realized he could not. He began, then stopped. "I genuinely can't remember." The stark admission hung between them, a devastating confession. Alex felt a pang in her chest, a mix of sadness and an unexpected, fierce desire to mend something profoundly broken in him. "Want to do something reckless?" she heard herself ask. Define reckless. Spontaneous. Entirely unplanned. Possibly unsuitable for a CEO in a $5,000 tuxedo. Grant looked at her for a long, silent moment. Then, he smiled. It wasn't the political smile she knew, but something genuine and a little untamed. "What have you concocted?" 20 minutes later, they were crammed onto plastic stools at a 24-hour greasy spoon diner in the Lower East Side, still in their gala attire, sharing a plate of cheese fries and sipping canned Dr. Pepper. "I cannot believe you've never eaten at a place like this," Alex said, watching Grant cautiously examine the cheese fry with the same scrutiny he'd apply to a financial statement. "My youth was highly curated," he admitted, taking a cautious, small bite. His eyes widened slightly. "This is surprisingly decent. Street food is one of the few true democracies left. Doesn't matter how much money you have, everyone waits in the same line." Grant laughed, a real spontaneous, full-bodied sound that entirely transformed his face. "You possess a remarkable perspective on everything. It comes from having observed the world from the bottom up, rather than constantly from the top down." "I'm sorry," Alex quickly interjected, realizing the implication. "I didn't mean to." "Don't apologize. It is genuinely refreshing." Grant leaned forward, resting his elbows on the Formica tabletop. "Most people tell me what they calculate I want to hear. You say precisely what you think. And that doesn't bother you? That I don't belong to your world?" The question slipped out, exposing a vulnerability that grew with every intimate moment they shared. "Alex," his voice was serious now, "my world is populated by people who inherited their relevance and mistakenly think that makes them interesting. People who have never worked a day in their lives but lecture me on how to run a corporation. People who view relationships as simple business transactions." He paused, his gaze intense. "You built your career on pure talent. You write about finance with an insight that most analysts I know lack. You are fiercely intelligent, funny, and genuinely care about substance over appearance." His eyes held hers. Why on earth would that bother me? Alex's heart hammered. The way he looked at her made the air thick and heavy. "Grant, I know," he said softly. "I know this was supposed to be strictly business, but it's becoming difficult to maintain the pretense." The raw truth of the confession hit her like a punch, because she felt the exact same way. The line between their performance and their reality had become so blurred that she often forgot where one ended and the other began. "We can't," she whispered. "Why?" "Because we exist in two completely different spheres. Because this entire thing began as a calculated lie. Because when the 6 weeks are up, I return to my life, and you remain Grant Lexington, billionaire CEO. What if I choose not to remain just that?" The question left her breathlessly silent. They stared at each other across the cheap diner table, the background noise a distant hum. Still dressed for a world entirely separate from the one they currently inhabited. "Don't complicate things, Grant," Alex finally managed, her voice weak. Perhaps some things deserve to be complicated. His phone buzzed then, shattering the intimate bubble. Grant glanced at the screen and sighed. My sister wants a full report on the concert. He declined the call. May I drive you home? The ride back to Brooklyn was silent, but it was a silence charged with 1,000 unsaid words. When they stopped outside Alex's apartment building, Grant turned off the engine and faced her. Alex? Yes? Thank you for tonight. For the music, for the terrible fries, for reminding me what it's like to feel authentically normal. She put her hand on the door handle, but didn't open it. Grant, what are we doing? I honestly don't know, he admitted, but I have no desire to stop. Alex looked at him for a long moment, imprinting the way the streetlight illuminated his eyes, the errant strand of hair that had escaped his perfect grooming. Good night, Grant. Good night, Alex. She got out and walked toward her building, fully aware he was watching her retreat. When she reached the door, she turned back one last time. He was still there, and as their eyes met through the glass, she saw something that sent a shiver of dread and soaring hope through her. Inside her apartment, Alex leaned against the closed door, heart hammering, because she knew something fundamental had shifted that night, something irreversible. And for the first time since accepting Grant's proposal, she had no idea if that was the most wonderful or the most terrifying thing that had ever happened to her. The highway to the Hamptons curved through the early fall landscape, the trees painted in brilliant golds and reds. Alex watched the scenery transition from the city's frantic energy to the coast's quiet luxury. Yet her mind remained turbulent. Are you all right? Grant asked, noticing her nervously twisting her hands in her lap. I'm perfectly fine. For someone who is about to meet your entire family while maintaining a complete, high-stakes deception, she retorted, attempting a casual tone and failing entirely. You're not pretending to be someone else. You are simply being yourself. Grant slowed the car for a sharp turn. And that, Alex replied, looking at him, is precisely the problem. Over the last 2 weeks, a subtle yet profound shift had occurred. Their conversations were deeper, the silences companionable, and the professional distance he'd been so careful to maintain was rapidly eroding. Does your sister know this is an arrangement? Camilla knows you're special, Grant said, his tone making Alex's stomach clench. That's all she needs to know for the moment. The Lexington family estate in the Hamptons was exactly as Alex had mentally catalogued. An imposing European-style mansion, manicured grounds, and a breathtaking ocean view. But she wasn't prepared for the woman in her early 30s, who burst out of the entrance as soon as the car stopped. Grant! Camilla Lexington was a vivid feminine echo of her brother. The same dark eyes, the same striking presence, but possessed of a bright, vibrant energy that Grant had clearly learned to suppress. She hugged him fiercely before turning to Alex with a genuine, warm smile. You must be Alex. I'm Camilla, and you are officially my favorite person for dragging my brother out of the city for a whole weekend. The warm reception instantly melted Alex's carefully constructed defenses. It's a pleasure to finally meet you. The pleasure is entirely mine. Come on. I need to show you everything and hear all the juicy details of how you two met. Camilla linked her arm through Alex's, practically pulling her toward the house. Grant was ridiculously vague on the phone, which means the story is absolutely scandalous. Over Camilla's shoulder, Alex caught Grant rolling his eyes, but his expression was soft with genuine affection. The afternoon dissolved into a blur of animated chatter and easy laughter. Camilla was an architect, recently returned from an MA in London, and her contagious passion for design and art immediately put Alex at ease. So, you're truly a financial reporter? Camilla asked, as they strolled through the vast gardens after lunch. It must be fascinating to constantly analyze those massive market shifts. It's like solving a giant, constantly changing puzzle, Alex explained. Every piece of data is a fragment, and the satisfaction is seeing the final, complete picture. And you managed to hold my brother's interest talking about work? Camilla laughed. That's honestly impressive. He usually zones out of any conversation that doesn't involve a spreadsheet after 5 minutes. Alex looked at Grant, who was a few yards away, deep in conversation on his phone with someone from his office. He's far more interesting than you give him credit for. Oh, I know he is, Camila said, her voice dropping to a more serious register. I just haven't seen that part of him in years, not since Dad passed away. They stopped near a large stone fountain, the sound of the falling water creating a soft soundtrack for their talk. Did he change drastically? Alex asked, her journalistic curiosity merging with a deeper personal concern. Completely. Before, Grant was lighter. He laughed more and worried less. He had his own dreams, you know? Camila lightly touched a rose in the garden. He actually wanted to be an architect. He adored drawing when we were children. The revelation stunned Alex. The controlled, hyper-focused Grant she knew seemed completely incapable of dreaming of anything but corporate dominance. What stopped him? Dad died, and someone had to run the company. Grant was the designated heir. Camila shrugged, a flicker of sadness in her eyes. He simply transformed into the person he believed he was required to be. And you? Why didn't you take the CEO role? Camila offered a dry, unbitter laugh. Because I'm a woman? Because I chose art over quarterly profits? Because I'm the rebellious daughter who lives abroad and dates a French chef Dad would have vehemently disapproved of? She looked directly at Alex. That, Alex, is precisely why you're so important. How so? Because you force him to remember who he was before he became just the CEO. Camila gently touched Alex's arm. I haven't seen my brother offer a genuine, uncalculated smile in years, until this afternoon. Before Alex could process the impact of that statement, Grant approached, putting his phone away. My apologies. Office emergency. There is always one, Camila sighed. Do you even remember a weekend when you didn't check email? Vaguely, Grant replied, a tease in his voice, as if recalling a past life. It was a dark, distant time. Well, tonight, absolute work ban, Camila declared. We'll have dinner on the patio, drink the wine I smuggled back from Bordeaux, and Alex will be providing all the embarrassing childhood stories about you. Good luck, Grant told Alex. Camila is relentless when she wants information. Dinner was exactly as Camila had promised. The patio provided a spectacular view of the moonlit water, and the excellent wine quickly loosened tongues and inhibitions. Alex found herself genuinely enjoying the evening, completely forgetting that she was supposed to be playing a role. So, at the wedding, he literally just appeared and asked you to fake a relationship? Camila asked, her eyes sparkling with amusement. More or less. He was incredibly direct, Alex admitted, glancing at Grant. Definitely not the most romantic start to a courtship. Absolutely not. Grant agreed, stomach, but it worked. It worked because Alex has a conscience too strong to leave someone publicly floundering, Camila observed, a shrewd look in her eyes that made Alex feel slightly exposed. Later, after Camila had retired, Alex and Grant remained alone on the patio. The quiet night air enveloped them, broken only by the distant, soothing sound of the waves. Your sister is amazing, Alex said, pulling the borrowed shawl tighter around herself. She likes you a great deal, Grant replied, leaning against the patio railing. Camila's approval is not easily earned. And is that important to you? Her approval? Grant was still for some moment, looking out at the mist-shrouded ocean. Camila is the only person in this world who genuinely knows me, who remembers who I was before I became this. He vaguely indicated himself. And who was that person? Someone who sketched blueprints instead of buying companies. Someone who cared more about the well-being of people than figures on a ledger. Grant turned to face her. Someone who foolishly believed love was more important than leverage. The gravity of the confession hung heavy between them. Alex felt a painful tightness in her chest, a mixture of tenderness and something dangerously close to real attachment. You can still be that person, she said softly. Can I? There was a vulnerability in his voice that made her heart ache. Yes, I see glimpses of him all the time. Grant took a step closer, and the space between them instantly became electrically charged. Alex? No, she whispered, holding her ground but refusing to retreat. No what? Don't look at me like that. Like what? Like this could possibly be real. The words were barely a breath, but they hit Grant with the force of a tidal wave. He backed away, running his hands through his already messy hair. What if I desperately want it to be real? The question hung suspended in the air, heavy with possibility and mutual fear. Alex felt unshed tears burning behind her eyes. We can't want that, Grant. We simply can't. Why not? Because when this is over, you will revert to your sphere, and I to mine. And the gap between them is too wide for a few dinners and honest conversations to bridge. Grant studied her, trying to read a hidden truth in her expression. The wealth, the difference, it's irrelevant. It always matters, Alex whispered, a single tear finally escaping. Grant moved toward her again, raising a hand as if to touch her face, then letting it fall uselessly. Good night, Alex. Good night, Grant. She watched him walk back into the house before allowing herself to weep silently under the cold coastal stars, because she knew something profound and non-negotiable had shifted that night, and she had no idea how to ever go back to the way things were. The New York Times newsroom buzzed with the frantic, typical energy of a Monday morning, but Alex found it impossible to focus on the noise around her. A week had passed since the weekend in the Hamptons, and her emotions were erratic, like trading shares, soaring with every text from Grant, plummeting whenever she remembered their entire arrangement had a definite expiration date. Alex, the voice of Charles Davies, her stern editor-in-chief, cut through her thoughts. My office, now. The dry, clipped tone was an instant alert. Charles only spoke that way when a major problem was on the horizon. For an investigative reporter, that usually meant a major story. Close the door, he instructed as she entered. Charles, a man in his 50s who had spent decades in hard-hitting journalism, had a desk perpetually buried under papers, photographs, and cold coffee. What's going on? Alex asked, sitting tensely in the chair across from him. You tell me. Robbie Vance approached me yesterday. Do you know of him? Charles leaned back, scrutinizing her with experienced eyes. Robbie Vance was a freelance investigative reporter known for his ruthless aggression and loose ethical standards. I know his dangerous reputation. He's running a deep investigation on the Lexington Group, suspicious money movements, potential high-level money laundering through several offshore subsidiaries. Charles leaned forward, his voice a low warning. And you, Alex, have been visibly attached to Grant Lexington lately. Alex's blood turned to ice. Charles, I need you to be brutally honest with me. Is there a professional conflict of interest here? Because if there is, we must shut this down before it blows up in the paper's face. The question hung over her, sharp and final. Alex felt a terrifying freefall, grasping for words that would compromise neither her professional integrity nor Grant. My relationship with Grant Lexington is personal, she stated carefully. It does not interfere with my reporting. A personal relationship? Charles raised an eyebrow sharply. Alex, you're dating the CEO of one of the country's largest corporations, and didn't think that was critical information for your editor? It wasn't. It didn't seem relevant until this moment. Well, it is now. Robbie has documents, Alex. Evidence of questionable transfers. Contracts with shell companies based in the British Virgin Islands. If this is legitimate, and you had knowledge of it. I didn't know, Alex interrupted, forcing the words out. And it was true. But a cold, professional part of her brain was already beginning to process the horrific implications. What kind of evidence? Charles opened a file and spread out photographs of financial documents across the table. Transfers of substantial value to offshore accounts. Contracts allegedly signed by Grant Lexington with companies that appear fictitious. Movement of over $50 million over the last 2 years. Alex picked up the documents, her hands trembling. The papers detailed complex, looping transfers, a web of connected companies, and at the core of it all, signatures she instantly recognized. Her stomach knotted violently. Where did Robbie get this? He wouldn't say. But if this material is authentic— Charles paused, his look significant. Alex, you must understand the gravity for the paper. If the Lexington Group is involved in high-level financial crime, and we discover our lead financial reporter is romantically involved with the CEO and failed to disclose or investigate, it will utterly destroy my reputation. And the paper's credibility, she finished for him. Charles settled back in his chair. I will give you a choice. Either you investigate this entire situation officially and rigorously, with full transparency about your involvement, or I will hand the story over to another reporter. Alex stared down at the documents, her sharp journalistic mind automatically tearing into the evidence, even as her heart quietly shattered. How long do I have? Robbie plans to publish next week. If we are to own this story and control the narrative, we need to move before he does. 1 week, Alex repeated, feeling as if the floor were dissolving beneath her. Alex, Charles said, his voice softening slightly. I know this is hellishly difficult, but you are a reporter first. If there is a true story here, it must be told. Alex left Charles's office feeling like she was carrying a ticking time bomb. She went straight to her desk and spread the documents out again. Her hands felt alien and unstable. Her phone vibrated. A text from Grant. Dinner tonight? I finally snagged a table at that sushi place you love. She stared at the message for endless minutes, then at the documents, then back at the message. How could she possibly eat dinner with him, knowing what she knew? How could she avoid dinner with him without instantly raising suspicion? Sure. What time? She replied, hating every single character she typed. The rest of the day was consumed by a blur of discreet online searches and careful phone calls. Alex tapped into every contact she had cultivated over 5 years, covering finance to verify the document's initial authenticity. With every confirmation, her heart fractured a little more. The Cayman companies existed only on paper. The massive transfers had definitely occurred. And the signatures, she'd need an expert. But they certainly looked real. At 7 p.m., Alex stood in front of the newsroom bathroom mirror, attempting to stabilize herself for the dinner. Her eyes were red from silent crying, and she applied extra concealer to hide the exhaustion and strain. The restaurant was intimate, traditional, the kind of quiet, upscale place where Grant felt completely at ease, and she usually felt entirely welcome. Tonight, however, every detail was amplified. The low chatter of other diners, the sharp clink of chopsticks, and the genuine, warm smile on Grant's face when she walked in. Are you all right? Were his first words after kissing her cheek. You look incredibly tense. Rough day at the office? Something like that, she replied. Technically, it wasn't a lie. For the first hour of dinner, Alex fought desperately to maintain a veneer of normalcy. They spoke about the Hamptons weekend, Camila's upcoming exhibition plans, everything but the folder of devastating documents that was searing a hole in her mind. Alex, Grant finally said, setting down his chopsticks. What is happening? You haven't truly looked me in the eye all night. The directness of the question forced her gaze up. His eyes were filled with genuine, piercing concern, and for a terrifying moment, she was ready to tell him everything. Almost. Grant, may I ask you one question about your company? Of course. Are you familiar with subsidiaries named Lexington Holdings, based out of the British Virgin Islands? She watched his face meticulously as she asked the question. A flicker of something. Surprise? Recognition? Passed over his features before his expression smoothed back into practiced neutrality. They're subsidiaries we use for necessary international investment, he replied calmly. Why? Just professional curiosity. I'm researching capital flight and movement of American assets abroad. Grant studied her for a few silent seconds. Alex, if you are working on a story about the Lexington Group, you absolutely need to tell me. The honesty and vulnerability in his voice felt like a sharp, twisting knife. Why? Because I trust you. And why is that so critical? He hesitated. Because what we have started is too important to be destroyed by a misunderstanding. Alex felt tears well up again. Grant, whatever question you're struggling to ask, just ask it. I promise I will answer truthfully. His sincerity utterly broke her resolve. She wanted to believe him. She desperately needed to believe that there was an innocent explanation for the transfers. But the documents felt real. The transfers were real. And her ethical responsibility as a journalist was non-negotiable. I have to leave, she said abruptly, standing up. Alex, wait! But she was already gone, fleeing into the chaotic night, carrying a heart shattered by an impossible choice. The man she was falling in love with, or the career that defined her very existence. And there was no viable path forward for both. Alex spent the entire night wide awake, oscillating between analyzing the spread-out documents on her coffee table and staring blankly at the ceiling. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Grant's face at the restaurant. The genuine concern, the implicit trust he had offered. At 6 a.m, she gave up on sleep and called the one financial crime specialist she trusted completely. Dr. Silvera, it's Alex Sterling from the New York Times. I need a massive favor. 2 hours later, she was in the forensic specialist's Manhattan office, watching the handwriting expert examine the signatures under a powerful magnifying glass. Interesting, Dr. Silvera murmured, adjusting his loupe. At first glance, the signatures appear completely authentic, but there are micro-inconsistencies in the pressure and flow. I will require more time for a complete, definitive analysis. How long? 48 hours. Alex left the office with more questions than answers, but a tiny, fragile spark of hope. If the signatures were fake, her phone rang. Grant. Good morning. His voice was tight, guarded. About last night. We can't talk right now. Alex cut him off, looking nervously around the busy street. I'm deep into investigating a story about my corporation. It wasn't a question. Alex felt her stomach clench. How did you know? Robbie Vance contacted me an hour ago. He wanted an official comment on the allegations he plans to publish. Grant's voice was low and controlled, but Alex heard the deep tension. Allegations that apparently you are also investigating. The charged silence between them stretched, thick with unspoken accusations. Alex, I need you to answer me this one question. Did this investigation begin before or after you agreed to our arrangement? The question hit her like a physical blow. Grant. Before or after, Alex? Be honest. His voice was hard now. After. I swear to you it was after. But you are investigating. It's my job. And what am I then? A source? A convenient idiot who provides privileged access? The raw hurt in his voice tore through Alex. Is that the truth? No? Then explain it to me, Alex. Explain how you could have dinner with me last night. Let me talk about trust. And then immediately go back to your office to investigate money laundering allegations against my firm, because I need to know the truth, too. Because I need to know the truth! The answer burst out louder than she intended, causing passers-by to stare. Because if you are involved, I need to know. And if you are not, I need to prove it. And you couldn't simply ask me? Could I? Could I really? Alex laughed bitterly. How many criminals confess their crimes when directly confronted? The silence that followed was terrifying. When Grant spoke again, his voice was chillingly cold. I understand. Well, for your story, Grant Lexington denies any involvement in illegal activities and is fully cooperating with all relevant inquiries. Grant, no! But the line had already gone dead. Alex stood motionless on the sidewalk, the phone still at her ear, feeling as if she had just destroyed something precious and irreplaceable with her own two hands. Back in the newsroom, she threw herself into the investigation with a fierce, desperate determination. If she was going to lose Grant, she would at least uncover the truth. She spent the next 2 days submerged in a complex, dizzying web of offshore corporations, wire transfers, and suspicious contracts. Every new lead led to a dead end. Every new discovery deepened the mystery instead of solving it. On Thursday, Dr. Silvera called. "Alex, you see this for yourself." An hour later, she was back in his office, watching him point out microscopic flaws in the documents. "These signatures are definite forgeries," he stated flatly. "Extremely well done, but fake. Note the formation of this letter G. The forger studied authentic examples, but there is a microscopic hesitation in the pen stroke that indicates conscious reproduction, not natural movement." Alex felt the suffocating weight lift from her chest. "Are you absolutely certain?" "Absolutely. What's even more crucial is that they were created using the exact same technique I've analyzed in several other high-level corporate fraud cases recently. Whoever did this is a top-tier professional." "What kind of professional?" "Someone with access to specialized equipment, high-level technical knowledge, and likely someone deeply embedded within the company itself." Alex left the forensic office with a surge of relief, mixed with a terrifying urgency. Grant was innocent, but someone close to him was definitely not. If Robbie Vance published his story first, Grant's reputation would be decimated before the truth could surface. She had to find the real culprit, and she had to do it immediately. Back at the newsroom, Alex locked herself in an empty conference room, spread out all the documents, and began tracing connections. If the signatures were faked, who had the authority to process those transfers on Grant's behalf? Who had high-level access to his official files and company accounts? Her investigation rapidly centered on Richard Ferris, the Caldwell Group's chief financial officer for a decade, and one of the few individuals with the requisite access and authority. But the evidence was still circumstantial. Her phone vibrated. A text from an unknown number. "Stop digging, or you will genuinely regret the consequences." Alex stared at the message, a cold shiver running down her spine. Someone was actively monitoring her investigation. Someone was terrified. This confirmed she was on the right path, but it also confirmed she was running out of time and in very real danger. The underground garage beneath the New York Times building was nearly deserted at 10 p.m. when Alex finally decided to head home. 3 days had passed since the threat, and she had worked tirelessly, determined to expose the truth before Robbie Vance could ruin Grant. Her focus remained fixed on Richard Ferris. She was putting her laptop into her bag when she heard footsteps echoing sharply in the vast empty space. She looked up and saw 2 large men in dark suits approaching her car, positioning themselves to block her exit route. "Alexandra Sterling." The taller man's voice was smooth, educated, but carried a distinct menace. "Yes," she replied, forcing her voice to remain steady as she gauged the distance to the elevator. "We need to have a conversation." "About what?" "About your aggressive investigation. You are inserting yourself into matters that are definitively not your concern." Alex's heart hammered, but she forced a neutral expression. "I am a journalist. Investigation is, by definition, my primary concern." The second man, shorter, with a faint scar above his eyebrow, stepped closer. "Not everything that looks like journalism is, Ms. Sterling. Sometimes it's merely dangerous curiosity." "Who are you?" "People who are very concerned about your continued safety," the tall man replied with a chilling, empty smile. New York City can be a surprisingly dangerous place for young women who work alone late at night. The thinly veiled threat caused Alex's blood to run cold, but she held her chin high. "If you'll excuse me, I need to leave." "Of course. but we sincerely hope you consider our advice. Some stories are simply not worth the personal cost." They moved away slowly, finally allowing Alex access to her car, her legs trembling beneath her. Only once she was inside, with the doors firmly locked, did she allow her hands to shake uncontrollably. She was driving out of the garage when her phone rang. Grant. For a wild second, she hesitated. They hadn't spoken since their terrible argument 3 days prior. But after the encounter, hearing his voice felt like a desperate necessity. "Alex!" His voice was ragged with tension. "Where are you?" "Leaving work. Why? Are you okay? I just got an alarming call. Someone mentioned you might be in extreme danger." Alex stopped at the first red light and closed her eyes. "Grant, I cannot talk about this right now." "Where exactly are you?" "Why?" "Because 2 men just paid me a visit at the office. They said you were asking dangerous questions and that I needed to make you stop." Alex's whole body went numb. "What men?" "They weren't identified." "Alex, you have to stop this investigation immediately. If you're certain of my innocence, what difference does it make who the true culprit is?" "It makes all the difference," Alex exclaimed, pulling over to a side street. "If Robbie Vance publishes first, your reputation will be destroyed, even if you are entirely innocent. I have to find the real culprit, not at the cost of your safety. Alex, listen to me. I will send my security detail to your apartment. Do not go back to your place tonight. I can't accept your protection. It compromises my investigation further." "To hell with your investigation." His voice exploded over the phone. "Alex, these people are not playing games. If anything happens to you..." He didn't finish the sentence, but the raw, unfiltered emotion in his voice was devastating. "I'll be fine," she said softly, fighting to regain control. "But I have to finish this." "Then finish it fast, and please be careful." After he hung up, Alex sat in her car for several minutes, trying to process the danger. Someone was desperate enough to threaten her life directly. This confirmed she was terrifyingly close to the truth, but it also meant time was completely running out. She made a decision that changed everything. Instead of going home, she drove directly to her best friend Julia's apartment. She needed a secure base of operations, and she desperately needed help. "Alex!" Julia threw open the door in pajamas, her eyes wide with alarm. "What time is it? What happened?" 3 hours later, they were sitting on Julia's living room floor, documents scattered everywhere, laptops open, scrutinizing every detail of the investigation. "Wait a second," Julia said, pointing to a series of wire transfers. "Did you see this? All of these suspicious transfers occurred when Grant was confirmed to be out of the country. Look at the dates." Alex cross-referenced the dates against Grant's public and private travel itinerary. Business trips, international conferences. Julia was absolutely correct. He could not have personally authorized these transactions. "Someone was using his authorization remotely," Alex murmured, a key piece of the puzzle sliding into place. "Or systematically forging documents." "I know," Julia said. "But what does that mean?" "It means I know who is orchestrating this, and I know how to prove it." Alex checked her watch. 3 a.m. In 6 hours, Robbie Vance would publish his article, utterly destroying Grant. She had that little time to save the man she realized, with terrifying clarity, she had fallen completely in love with, even if he never forgave her for doubting him. Alex woke up on Julia's sofa at 5 a.m., her laptop still resting on her chest, a sudden, powerful epiphany blazing in her mind. During her few hours of fitful sleep, her subconscious had processed all the scattered evidence and arrived at a single, devastating conclusion. Richard Ferris was not only the architect of the fraudulent transfers, he had been Grant's trusted CFO for a decade. The man he relied on the most. The depth of the betrayal would be catastrophic on every level. But first, Alex needed one final, irrefutable piece of proof. "Julia," she whispered, gently shaking her friend. "I need your computer. Mine is compromised." "What time is it?" Julia groaned, still half asleep. 5 a.m., I'm sorry, but it's essential. With Julia still sleeping, Alex logged into public corporate registry systems. Her plan was insane and risky. She would trace the suspicious transfers past the shell companies to their final destination, following a financial paper trail that should ultimately lead directly back to the real culprit. 3 hours later, she had the proof she needed. The BVI shell companies were mere intermediaries. The money ultimately landed in a Swiss account registered under a consulting firm, which, after deep searching, belonged solely to Richard Ferris. My God, she whispered to the screen. He stole over $60 million. Her phone rang. An unknown number. Hello? Alex Sterling. The voice was male, educated and shaking with nerves. Yes. Yes, speaking. I'm Dr. Marcus Oliver, an accountant in the Caldwell Group's internal audit division. I see you're investigating financial irregularities. Alex sat bolt upright. How did you know? Because I've been investigating too, for months, and I have evidence you need to see immediately. What kind of evidence? Original documents proving how Richard Ferris falsified internal authorizations, and system logs confirming he was logged into the network during every single suspicious transfer. Alex's heart hammered. Where can we meet? The employee cafe in the basement of the Lexington Tower. In 1 hour. And Alex? Bring a recorder. Because when Richard realizes I'm talking, my life may be in serious danger. An hour later, Alex was sitting at a discreet table in the corporate cafe, watching a thin, nervous man in his 40s slide a thin file across the table. Richard Ferris has been using his position to systematically siphon money for at least 2 years, Dr. Oliver explained in a low, tight voice. He forged Grant's signatures, created false documentation, and used his high-level system access to authorize the transfers while Grant was traveling. Why didn't you report him sooner? Because he's untouchable. 10 years with the firm, Grant's absolute trust, and responsible for huge, questionable profit increases no one dared to question. Oliver opened the file, but I documented everything. Alex scanned the documents, internal emails, precise system logs, even photographs of Richard at his desk at the exact times the transfers were processed. It was devastating, irrefutable evidence. Dr. Oliver, why are you showing me this? Why not Grant directly? Because I tried. Richard has access to Grant's office, his email, his calendar. Anything I send, Richard intercepts first. But he cannot control the media. Oliver leaned forward. If you publish this story, Grant will see it and be forced to act. Exactly, Alex finished. Just be cautious. Richard Ferris is not just a thief. He's a very dangerous man when cornered. Alex was leaving the cafe when she received a text from Charles. Robbie Vance is publishing in 2 hours. I need your story now. She raced to the newsroom, her fingers flying across the keyboard, constructing the story that would change everything. The headline was clear. Lexington Group CFO diverted $60 million in massive fraud scheme. The article methodically detailed how Richard Ferris had used his position of trust to systematically steal from the company, forging signatures and creating a complex network of shell corporations. Crucially, it made it crystal clear that Grant Lexington was the victim, not the perpetrator. Outstanding work, Alex, Charles said, reviewing the final draft. This is going to turn the market upside down and save an innocent man's reputation, Alex added silently. The article went live at 11:47 a.m., a full 2 hours before Robbie Vance's planned publication. Within 15 minutes, Alex's phone was ringing off the hook. Reporters, financial analysts, and lawyers, all demanding comment. But the one call she desperately waited for never came. Grant did not call. At 3 in the afternoon, with the Lexington Group stock having already stabilized, and Richard Ferris being led away in handcuffs by the FBI, Alex finally received a text from him. Thank you for clearing my name. But I can't forget that you doubted me. We need to talk. Alex stared at the message, a paralyzing mix of relief and terror washing over her. She had saved his reputation, but she had likely obliterated any chance of a future together. Because some breaches of trust, even when rationally justifiable, leave scars that never truly fade. Grant's office on the 40th floor of the Lexington Tower offered a breathtaking panoramic view of Manhattan, a sight Alex would normally find inspiring. But this afternoon, just 3 hours after Richard Ferris's arrest, she could barely focus on anything beyond the man sitting rigidly behind the mahogany desk. Grant was impeccably dressed, as always, dark suit, tie perfectly aligned, but the tension in his shoulders was palpable. When she entered, he did not rise, simply gesturing to the chair in front of his desk. "Sit down." The formal tone hit her like a slap. This was not the Grant who had laughed in the diner or shared painful memories of his mother. This was the CEO, distant, cold, and entirely in control. "Grant, first my thanks," he cut her off, his voice flat. "Your investigation saved my reputation and likely the company itself." Richard was planning to dump his own shares when the scandal broke, causing an even greater collapse. Alex sat silently, waiting. "Second," Grant continued, his eyes finally meeting hers. "We need to discuss what happened between us. I know you're furious." "Furious?" Grant offered a short, dry, humorless laugh. "Alex, I am devastated." The word hit her harder than any shouted accusation. "You doubted me," he stated simply. "For 3 days, you genuinely believed I was capable of stealing $50 million, of risking the livelihoods of 50,000 employees, of destroying my family's legacy. I had strong evidence. You had documents. I offered you honesty." Grant rose, walking slowly to the window. "When I asked if you were investigating my company, you lied to me. A lie of omission is still a lie, Alex." He turned back. "But the thing that kills me most? You never, at any point, came to me and asked, 'Grant, did you do this?' You simply assumed my guilt and began building a case against me." Her careful words broke apart one by one against the weight of his accusation. He was right. She had jumped to the conclusion of his guilt, based on paper, not based on the man she had come to know. "I was trying to protect you," she whispered. "Protect me?" Grant walked back to his chair, leaning his elbows on the desk. "How exactly? If I hadn't investigated, Robbie Vance would have published a story that completely ruined you, with no chance for defense. By investigating, I could uncover the truth and clear your name. And if I had been guilty, would you still have destroyed me?" The question hung in the air, terrible and final. Alex felt tears welling up. "I don't know," she admitted honestly. "I hope I would have found the courage to do the right thing." "The right thing," Grant repeated, his voice laced with pain. "And what was the right thing, Alex? To destroy the man who was falling in love with you for the sake of journalistic truth?" The use of the past tense, "was falling in love," hit her like a physical shot. "Grant, No." He held up a hand. "Let me finish, because I need you to understand this." He leaned back, gazing at her with an intensity that made her want to shrink away. "Over the last 3 years, since my father passed, I have explicitly trusted exactly 3 people. My sister, my assistant, and Richard Ferris. Camila lives in Europe. My assistant handles my calendar. And Richard was robbing me blind for 2 years." Grant paused, running a hand through his hair. "Then you walked into my life, and for the first time in years, I allowed myself to trust someone new. More than trust, I allowed myself to feel something real." "You can still..." "Can I?" Grant interrupted. "Can I really? Because every time I look at you now, I will remember that when the real test came, you chose your job and your principles over asking me for the truth. The tears finally broke free and streamed down Alex's face. It wasn't like that. Then explain how it was. Explain how you could have dinner with me, listen to me talk about trust, and then walk straight out to investigate Mihde as a criminal. Because I was terrified. The answer exploded out of her. Because I was falling in love with you, and that scared me more than anything. Because when I saw those documents, I immediately thought, it's too good to be true. I finally found out why someone like him would ever be interested in someone like me. Grant blinked, clearly not expecting the raw confession. Someone like you? He repeated, confused. Billionaire. Powerful. Handsome. Brilliant. And I'm just a reporter who splits the rent on a Brooklyn apartment. Alex wiped her tears away with the back of her hand. When I saw those documents, a part of me thought, of course there's a catch. Men like him don't truly care about women like me unless there's a hidden motive. The silence that followed was heavy and absolute. Grant stared at her for a long time, as if seeing her for the very first time. Alex, he finally said, his voice dropping to a softer tone. Do you truly believe that? Sometimes, she whispered. Then you don't know me at all. The statement confused her. What do you mean? Grant rose again, but this time, he walked directly to her, stopping close enough for her to feel his warmth. You think I'm interested in you because it's convenient? Because it's easy? He lowered himself slightly until they were eye level. Alex, you are the most difficult thing that has ever happened to me. Thank you, she said, managing a tearful, weak joke. You challenge me. You make me question everything I thought I knew about myself. You make me want to be better. His eyes were intense, vulnerable. You think I want this because it's easy? Alex looked at him seeing past the anger to the deep well of hurt underneath. I ruined everything, didn't I? Grant sighed, pulling away slightly. I honestly don't know, Alex. I truly don't. What does that mean? It means I need time to process this, to figure out if I can ever trust you again. The word again implied possibility, and Alex clung to it like a life raft. How long will that take? I don't know that either. Grant returned behind his desk, reassuming the CEO posture. What I do know is that our arrangement is fulfilled. You no longer need to pretend to be my girlfriend. The final sentence was delivered with such formality that Alex felt something wither inside her. So, that's it? She asked, standing up. It's over? Grant looked at her for a long, painful moment. I don't know, Alex. I honestly don't know if it ever truly began. Alex left his office with her heart completely broken, but with a fierce, burning resolve growing inside her. One thing had become crystal clear during the agonizing conversation. She was hopelessly in love with Grant Lexington, and if there was even a minute chance of repairing the damage, she would fight for it, even if it meant fighting Grant himself. A week passed since the devastating conversation in Grant's office, and Alex felt as though she were operating in a muted, gray, parallel world. She functioned. She went to work, wrote articles, answered emails. But it felt as if an essential part of her had been left behind on the 40th floor. The Richard Ferris story had earned her professional accolades and a nomination for a major investigative journalism award. But every congratulation felt hollow. She had saved the career of the man she loved and utterly destroyed any hope of a future with him in the process. Are you going to eat anything today, or just push that food around your plate again? Julia asked during their Saturday brunch in Brooklyn. I'm not hungry. Alex, it's been a week. You need to stop punishing yourself. I'm not punishing myself, I'm processing. Julia rolled her eyes. Processing? You're wasting away. There's a difference. Alex finally looked at her friend. He said he didn't know if it had ever truly begun, Ju. How do you process that? You process it by talking to him, not by aggressively avoiding every single place he might possibly be. It was true. Alex had meticulously dodged every social event where Grant might appear, turning down invitations to galas and dinners she would normally cover professionally. She was being a coward, and she knew it. He doesn't want to see me. You don't know that. Yes, I do. He changed his cell phone number. Julia stopped stirring her coffee. How do you know that? Alex flushed. I may have tried calling it a few times. A few? 15 times. Fine, 15 times. Jesus, Alex. I know, okay? I know I'm being pathetic. Alex finally picked up a piece of toast, more to give her hand something to do than out of hunger. But I can't stop thinking that if I could just talk to him one more time, explain myself better. Explain what? You did your job. You uncovered the truth. You saved his entire reputation. And I simultaneously nuked any trust he had in me. Julia sighed. Look, I'll be blunt. Maybe you screwed up, but he screwed up too. Alex looked up, surprised. What do you mean? He put you in an impossible position from the start. He asked you to fake a relationship, gave you access to his privileged world, and then got offended when your professional life intersected with his personal one. Julia shook her head. That's not fair. You're a journalist. It's your nature to investigate inconsistencies. He knew that when he hired you for this whole theatrical mess. It wasn't a mess, Alex said softly. Not to me, not entirely. And that precisely is what you need to tell him. That evening, Alex was in her apartment, trying to focus on a book, when her phone rang. For a crazy second, her heart leaped, thinking it might be Grant, but it was an unknown number. Hello? Alex Sterling. The voice was feminine, sophisticated, and faintly hostile. Yes, speaking. This is Helena Lexington, Grant's aunt. I believe we've met. Alex immediately recalled the elegant, judgmental woman from the wedding. Of course. How can I help you, Mrs. Lexington? I actually thought we might talk, personally. Do you have time for coffee tomorrow? The tone immediately put Alex on guard. About what? About my nephew, and about how you nearly destroyed our family. The brutal accusation left Alex momentarily speechless. I saved his reputation. You exposed him to a massive public scandal that should never have seen the light of day, Helena countered. And in the process, you broke his heart in a way I haven't seen since my sister passed. The mention of Grant's mother caught Alex completely off guard. Mrs. Lexington, I never intended to hurt him, but you did. And now he is more withdrawn than ever, more ruthlessly focused on the company, more distant from any possibility of personal happiness. Helena paused. So, I need you to understand something very clearly. You have caused sufficient damage. Stay away from my family. The line went dead, leaving Alex staring at her phone in shock. Helena Lexington had basically declared war. But she had also revealed something crucial. Grant was hurting just as badly as Alex was, and that meant there might still be hope. The next morning, Alex woke with a fierce, quiet resolution she hadn't felt in weeks. If Grant was suffering, if the feelings were still there, she could not give up. Not without fighting. First, she needed a way to talk to him that didn't involve calling a number he'd changed or showing up where security would remove her. Then, she remembered Camila. Alex spent the morning researching and discovered that Camila Lexington had a photography exhibition opening that week at the David Zwirner Gallery in Chelsea. If there was one person in the Lexington family who might help, it was her. The gallery was buzzing with energy. Alex observed from the street, watching Camila circulate, discussing her photographs with the genuine passion Alex remembered from the Hamptons. Taking a deep breath, she adjusted her blazer and walked in. Camila's exhibition was stunning. Large black and white photos of urban Manhattan architecture, capturing the city's complex, melancholy soul. Alex paused at one particular image, the reflection of a modern skyscraper in the windows of an antique building, past and future existing in a single, poignant frame. Powerful, isn't it? Camila's voice startled her. Alex turned to face a cautious, knowing smile. Camila, congratulations on the show. Your work is exceptional. Thank you. Camila hesitated for a moment. I wasn't expecting to see you here. I needed to talk to you. I figured. Camilla glanced around the busy gallery. Let's step outside. They settled at a small cafe on the corner, away from the prying eyes of the gallery crowd. Camilla ordered a double espresso and studied Alex with eyes that painfully resembled Grant's. My aunt called you, didn't she? It wasn't a question. How did you know? Because Helena believes that protecting the family means controlling every single aspect of our lives. And because my brother has been a complete disaster for the last 2 weeks. Alex's heart leaped. He's a disaster! Alex, he hasn't offered a single genuine smile since you two argued. He works 20 hours a day, refuses all social invitations, and yesterday, I caught him staring at a photo of the two of you on his phone. Camilla leaned forward. So, yes, he is a disaster. A photo of us? From the diner night. You were both laughing uncontrollably. Camilla smiled sadly. It was the first time I'd seen my brother truly happy in years. Alex felt tears stinging her eyes. Camilla, I completely messed this up. I don't know how to fix it. First, tell me what truly happened. The real version, not the one Grant gave me. For the next hour, Alex recounted everything. The fear, the insecurity, the impossible choice she found herself in between love and professional duty. Camilla listened silently, asking sharp, occasional questions, her eyes never leaving Alex's face. Do you love him? Camilla asked, when Alex finished her story. Hopelessly. And does he know that? Alex hesitated. I don't think so. I said things, but I never said it directly. Alex, my brother has spent the last 3 years convincing himself that he doesn't deserve personal love, that his only purpose is to lead the company and honor our father's cold legacy. You were the first person to make him fundamentally question that. And then I proved he was right to distrust me. No, you proved you are human. You make mistakes, just like everyone else. But you also proved that you fight for the people you love. Camilla gently touched Alex's hand. He can't see that right now because he is terrified. Grant has always been this way. When he feels most vulnerable, he closes himself off completely. Camilla paused. But there's one thing you need to know. He has closed the deal with the Japanese investors. Officially, he no longer needs a girlfriend to prove his stability. Alex felt a flicker of confusion. And that means... It means that if he wanted to simply forget you and move on, he would have done so already. The fact that he is suffering means his feelings are absolutely real. So what do? Camilla offered a fierce, genuine smile. You fight for him, but not as a reporter, not as someone trying to solve a problem. You fight as the woman who is desperately in love with him. How? You show up at his life. You force a conversation. You are stubborn. You are insistent. You are completely inconvenient. Camilla laughed. Be everything Helena despises in a woman. Alex felt a spark of her old fire ignite for the first time in weeks. What if he sends me away? Then you come back. And you come back, Owen. Until he realizes you are not going to give up on him, the way everyone else in his life has. Camilla. Alex hesitated. Why are you helping me? Your family clearly disapproves, because in 20 years as Grant's sister, I have never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. And because everyone deserves a chance to fight for true love. 2 hours later, Alex was standing outside Grant's penthouse building in Midtown, staring up at the illuminated windows. Her heart was pounding so hard, she was certain the security guards could hear it. She had rehearsed a dramatic speech during the taxi ride, but now, faced with the terrifying reality of confronting him, all the words had dissolved. May I help you? The doorman watched her with professional curiosity. I need to speak with Grant Lexington. Is he expecting you, ma'am? No. But it's critically important. The doorman hesitated, clearly recognizing her from the public appearances, but unsure of the current protocol. I'll check if he's available. 5 agonizing minutes later, the doorman returned. I apologize, miss. Mr. Lexington said he is not receiving visitors today. Alex felt a piece of her heart crumble, but Camila's voice echoed fiercely in her mind. Be stubborn. Be insistent. Be inconvenient. Could you please tell him that I need to return something that belongs to him? What is it, ma'am? Alex pulled the business card Grant had given her weeks ago out of her pocket. On the back, still written in elegant script, was the single word, thanks. Tell him it's about a promise he made. Another 5 minutes crawled by. This time, when the doorman returned, a small smile touched his face. He said you may go up. Penthouse. The elevator seemed to ascend in slow motion. Alex checked her reflection. Hair wind-tossed, eyes still slightly red, but a fierce determination burning in every line of her face. The doors opened directly into the private foyer of the penthouse. Grant was standing there, leaning against the doorframe of his apartment, and Alex had to grab the elevator wall to keep from stumbling. He was barefoot, wearing only jeans and a white shirt, with the sleeves carelessly rolled up. His hair was messy, as if he had run his hands through it repeatedly, and dark shadows underscored his eyes. Shadows that hadn't been there 2 weeks ago. Alex, his voice was carefully neutral. Hi. They stared at each other across the small space, years of unspoken conversation filling the silence. What promise? He finally asked. Alex took a deep, steadying breath, gathering all the courage she possessed. You said you would answer any honest question I asked you. I did. Then I have one question for you. Grant studied her for a long, quiet moment. Then, he moved away from the door, allowing her to step into the apartment. The penthouse was exactly as Alex had imagined. Modern, minimal, with a spectacular view of the city. But what surprised her were the small, intimate details. Photographs of Camila scattered around, books piled high, and a drafting table near the window covered with architectural sketches. You still draw, she observed softly. Sometimes, when I can't sleep. Grant walked toward the integrated kitchen. Do you want something to drink? Grant, stop. He froze, his back to her. Stop being polite. Stop pretending we're strangers. Stop acting like none of what happened between us was real. Slowly, he turned around. And what do you want me to do? I want you to tell me if there is still any hope for us. The question hung suspended between them, fragile and terrifying. Grant stared at her for long seconds, and Alex watched a silent, internal battle raging in his eyes. Alex. No. She took a step toward him. Don't give me a political answer. Give me an honest one. The honest answer? Grant ran a frustrated hand through his hair, messing it up further. The honest answer is that I cannot stop thinking about you. That I sleep 3 hours a night, because every time I close my eyes, I see you walking out of my office. That I changed my number because I was calling your old one 15 times a day. Alex's heart stopped. You were? I was. Pathetically. He offered a bitter laugh. So yes, there's still hope. There always was hope. But Alex, I don't know how to trust you again. Then let me show you how. How? Alex took another step toward him. Then another, until she was close enough to see the small, exhausted lines around his eyes. Let me stay. Let me prove to you every single day that you can trust me, that I choose you, not my career, not my safety, not my fear. Her voice was breaking, but she pushed on. Let me show you that I love you. Grant stood utterly motionless. What did you say? I love you, Grant. Her voice was fierce and clear. I am hopelessly in love with you, in a way that both terrifies and completes me. And I know I messed up. I know I broke your trust. But if you give me one chance... She couldn't finish the sentence because, suddenly, Grant was kissing her. It wasn't gentle or hesitant. It was desperate, starved, like he was drowning and she was the only air. His hands tangled fiercely in her hair, pulling her closer, closer. Alex felt tears streaming down her face. Hers, his, she didn't know. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing like they had run a marathon. I love you too, Grant whispered against her forehead. God. Alex, I love you so much it physically hurts. Then why are we fighting? Because I'm scared, he admitted. Because everyone I've ever loved has either left me or betrayed me. And when you doubted me— Never again, Alex interrupted, holding his face in her hands. I will never doubt you again. I promise. And if there's another story, another massive scandal, then I will come straight to you first. I will ask you directly. I will listen to your version. And we will decide how to handle it together. Grant studied her face, looking for any sign of hesitation or doubt. He found none. Together, he repeated, the word a solemn vow. He kissed her again, softer this time, sealing a promise that they both intended to keep. But neither of them knew that in less than 20 hours, that promise would be tested in the most terrifying way imaginable. The next morning dawned gray and heavy over Manhattan, the sky promising rain. Alex woke on Grant's sofa, where they had spent the night talking, rebuilding bridges, and mapping out a future that finally felt achievable. Good morning, Grant murmured against her neck, embracing her from behind as she made coffee in his kitchen. Good morning. She turned in his arms, still not fully believing their reconciliation was real. Sleep well? Better than I've slept in weeks. He kissed her forehead softly. I have to head into the office early, meeting with the legal team about the Richard Ferris case. Alex nodded. Richard Ferris's arrest had triggered a wave of legal proceedings that required Grant's constant attention. I'm heading to the newsroom too. Charles wants me to write a follow-up article on the scandal's fallout. Be careful what you write, Grant said, a loving tease in his tone. I don't want my girlfriend being too harsh on me in the press. The word girlfriend, real this time, made Alex's heart pound. 2 hours later, Alex was at her desk, deep in research on corporate financial crime, when her phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Alex Sterling? The voice was male. Trolled and vaguely familiar. Yes, this is she. My name is Richard Ferris. Alex's blood ran cold. How are you calling? You should be in custody. Yes, I should. But competent lawyers manage interesting, temporary arrangements. There was a chilling flatness in his voice. I need to speak with you. We have absolutely nothing to discuss. I have information that might interest the journalist in you. Information about transfers Grant genuinely authorized, about accounts he genuinely knew about. Alex felt her stomach drop. You are lying. Am I? Then why is Grant attempting to block certain lines of inquiry? Why were certain documents accidentally shredded last week? Because you falsified evidence. Some evidence, yes. But not all of it, Alex. Not all of it. The line was silent for a few seconds, and Alex could hear her own heart hammering. What do you want? To meet you. 1 hour. Alone. To show you what truly happened. Never. Think carefully, Alex. If there is even a minuscule chance Grant is hiding something, don't you want to know? Or has your love for him finally destroyed your journalistic integrity? The provocation hit exactly where Richard intended. Alex closed her eyes, hating herself for the hesitation, but completely unable to ignore the possibility. Where? She asked, against her better judgment. Meet me at the warehouse on Pemberton Street, number 847, in the Bronx, in 2 hours. That address is isolated. Yes, because I don't want our conversation interrupted. The line went dead, leaving Alex staring at the phone with a mounting sense of dread. She should call Grant. She should call the police. She should do anything but what she was considering. But the seed of doubt Richard had planted, the terrifying possibility that secrets still remained, consumed her like acid. An hour and a half later, Alex was standing outside a derelict warehouse on the outskirts of the Bronx, questioning every decision that had led her there. The location was exactly as Richard had described, isolated, surrounded by other vacant buildings, with no sign of life. Her phone vibrated. A text from Grant. How's the article coming? I love you. The simple, loving message almost made her turn around and leave. Almost. Alex slipped into the warehouse through an unlocked side door. The interior was shrouded in shadows, lit only by streaks of sunlight filtering through high, broken windows. Punctual. I appreciate that in a journalist. Richard Ferris emerged from the gloom, and Alex recoiled at his appearance. The polished, elegant man she knew had been replaced by someone with wild eyes and rumpled clothes. The brief time in custody had taken its toll. "Where are the documents?" Alex asked, maintaining distance. Straight to the point. I like that too. The documents are here. But first, I want you to understand something. What? You destroyed my life for a man who isn't worth your tears. Alex took a step back, the alarm instinct screaming in her mind. Richard, this is madness. Madness is losing everything because of some idealistic reporter who fell for the wrong man. 10 years, Alex. 10 years I worked 80 hours a week to build that company. 10 years as the loyal right-hand man, the reliable executor, the man who did all the dirty work Grant was too young or too privileged to do. He began circling her like a predator. And what was my reward? Watching a spoiled boy inherit everything I helped create. So you stole from him. I took what was rightfully mine. Every dollar I transferred was back pay for years of unacknowledged labor. His voice exploded through the massive space. And the documents you claim to have? Richard laughed, a harsh, humorless sound. There are no documents, Alex. Just as there is no evidence that Grant knew a damn thing. You were right in your investigation. The chilling realization hit her like a punch. Then why bring me here? Because you are going to retract everything. You are going to write a new story stating that you were wrong. That Grant was involved from the very beginning. That the evidence was deliberately planted to protect him. I will never do that. Yes, you will. Richard pulled a small handgun from his jacket pocket. Because if you don't, you won't leave here to write anything at all. Alex felt the world spin. Richard, this is insane. You can leave the country, start over somewhere else. With what money? You and your brilliant investigation froze every single one of my accounts. He pointed the gun directly at her. No, Alex. If I'm going down, I'm taking both of you with me. The sudden sound of screeching tires and approaching vehicles outside made both of them turn. Through the broken windows, Alex saw flashing red and blue lights. Police! An amplified voice boomed from outside. Come out with your hands up! Your boyfriend works fast, Richard muttered, a dark malice in his tone. But not fast enough. He grabbed Alex by the arm, yanking her to her feet, and pressed the cold barrel of the gun hard against her ribs. Richard, please! The warehouse door burst open violently, and Grant walked in like a storm, followed by uniformed, heavily armed police officers. His eyes instantly found Alex's across the space, and she saw pure, terrifying fear in his expression. Let her go, Richard, Grant commanded, his voice surprisingly calm despite the circumstances. Ah, the prince has arrived to save his princess, Richard sneered, tightening his grip on Alex and the gun. How touching. What do you want? I want my life back. I want the last 10 years back. I want you to publicly admit that everything you own, you owe to me. Grant took a small, deliberate step forward. I will do that, Richard. Just release Alex. No! Alex screamed. Grant, don't do it! She's right. Richard laughed, the sound hysterical. Even if you did, it wouldn't change anything. It's too late for all of us. It was then. Alex saw Grant make a calculated decision. He glanced quickly at the officers behind him, nodded briefly, and then did something that terrified her. He took a deliberate step toward them. Grant, no! Alex shrieked, but he continued advancing, speaking in a low, soothing voice to Richard. You're right about one thing. You worked hard for the company. Maybe we didn't acknowledge it enough. You knew my father better than I did, Richard. You worked with him when I was just a boy. Tell me about him. The tactic worked. For a split second, Richard eased his grip on Alex, a flicker of raw nostalgia crossing his face. It was the second Grant needed. He launched himself forward, shoving Alex violently to the side and tackling Richard. The gunshot echoed through the massive warehouse like a single clap of thunder, and Alex screamed as both men crashed hard onto the concrete floor. For a terrifying moment, she couldn't see who had been hit. Then Grant slowly rose, clutching his left arm, where blood was rapidly blooming through his white shirt. "Alex," he said, his voice strained. "Are you okay?" She scrambled to her feet and rushed to him, tears streaming down her face. "Grant, you were shot." "It's just a graze," he lied, pulling her into a fierce, one-armed embrace. All around them, police officers were tackling and subduing a screaming, incoherent Richard. But Alex could only focus on the man who had risked everything to save her. "Why did you do that?" she whispered against his blood-stained chest. "Why?" "Because," Grant said simply, his voice hoarse with emotion. "Some people are worth any risk." And in that moment, with his blood on her shirt and sirens screaming all around them, Alex knew with absolute certainty that they had survived everything the world could possibly throw at them. Epilogue, the real contract. 3 months later, the New York Presbyterian Hospital had released Grant after a 2-week stay. The bullet had only grazed his arm, more dramatic than dangerous. But the ensuing 3 weeks of police investigation, testimony, and media coverage had tested their endurance in ways no physical injury could have. Alex was sitting at her desk at the New York Times, finalizing what would be her last article for the paper. Her formal resignation letter was already sitting on Charles's desk. She had decided to open her own corporate communications firm, specializing in crisis management, a decision that had surprised everyone but Grant. "So, it's official?" Julia asked, leaning against Alex's desk. "You're leaving journalism?" "Not leaving. Evolving." Alex saved the document and closed her laptop. "I'll still investigate. I'll still write. But now I'll help companies be more transparent instead of just exposing their failures." "And that has absolutely nothing to do with your boyfriend being the CEO of one of the largest corporations in the country," Alex smiled. "It has everything to do with the fact that I discovered I prefer building bridges to burning them." Her phone vibrated. A text from Grant. "Ready? The car is waiting. We have a destination." "I have to go," Alex said, gathering her things. "Grant wants to show me something." "Something that requires a gown?" Julia asked, noticing the elegant navy blue dress Alex was wearing, the same one from the wedding. "Something that requires courage," Alex replied mysteriously. An hour later, Alex was standing in Grant's penthouse, but the apartment had been completely transformed. Candles were scattered everywhere. A path of rose petals led from the front door to the dining table. Soft jazz played quietly. "Grant?" she called, walking in slowly. He appeared from the kitchen, dressed in a dark suit, but with a new lightness to his posture. "Hello," he said, smiling in the way that still made her heart race. "What is all this?" "Dinner, a celebration." "Celebrating what?" Grant walked toward her, taking her hands. "Many things. Your final piece for the Times. My complete recovery. Richard Ferris finally being convicted." He paused, his gaze locking with hers. "And something else." "What else?" Grant led her to the dining table, which was perfectly set for 2. In the center, beside the flowers and candles, was a small, black velvet box. Alex's heart stopped. "Grant, let me speak first," he gently interrupted, picking up the box. "In the last 6 months, you have completely transformed my life in ways I can't even begin to articulate. You taught me that work is not life, that success is not happiness, and that trust is not something you earn once. It is something you build every single day." He dropped to one knee, opening the box to reveal a simple, stunning diamond ring. "Alexandra Sterling, will you spend the rest of your life reminding me of who I truly am?" For a moment, Alex couldn't speak. Tears streamed down her face, but she was smiling brighter than she ever had before. "Is this a A marriage proposal? She finally managed to ask. It's a proposal for a partnership, forever, Grant smiled. But yes, it is also a marriage proposal. Grant? Alex knelt down too, putting herself on the same level as him. Are you sure? Your family. My family will have to accept the woman I choose to love. His voice was firm. And if they don't, that is their problem, not ours. And the difference between our worlds? There is no difference between our worlds, Alex. There is only one world, and we are going to build it together. Alex looked at the ring, then back at the man who was offering her not just marriage, but an entire life of shared possibility. Yes, she whispered, the word bursting from her chest. Yes, I accept. Grant slipped the ring onto her finger, and then they were kissing, laughing, and crying all at once. The ring fit perfectly, as if it had been designed specifically for her. There is one more thing, Grant said, when they finally separated. Grant, I don't know if my heart can handle any more surprises. He stood up, pulling her with him, and guided her to the drafting table near the window. Spread out on it was a series of detailed architectural blueprints. What are these? Alex asked. Designs for a foundation I want to establish. Education and opportunity for kids from underserved communities. Grant pointed to the details. And I want you to lead the Communications and Public Relations Division. Alex studied the designs, recognizing the style she had seen in his scattered sketches. You drew these? Yes. In the last few nights when I couldn't sleep, thinking about how we can use what we have to make a real difference. Grant, this is incredible. She looked at him with renewed, fierce admiration. But why a foundation? Because you taught me that power without purpose is empty. And because I want our children to grow up knowing their parents fought for something greater than themselves. The casual mention of children made Alex's heart soar. Our children? Grant flushed slightly. Well, eventually, if you want that. I do, she said without hesitation. I want all of it. The foundation, the children, the life we're building. They ate dinner in this penthouse as the city lights glittered around them. They discussed plans for the wedding, a small, intimate ceremony at the family estate in the Hamptons. The foundation and the future. Uncertain, but faced together. Can I ask you one thing? Alex said, as they danced slowly in the living room, the music soft and enveloping. Anything. Do you still remember that first day in the coffee shop when you proposed our arrangement? Grant laughed softly. How could I forget? You nearly threw coffee at me. I was right to be suspicious, Alex said, smiling. You were trying to manipulate me. Was I? Yes, you were. You claimed you needed a fake girlfriend, but what you really needed was someone to remind you of how to truly live. Grant stopped dancing, looking down at her in astonishment. How did you know that? Because I'm a journalist. It's my job to read between the lines. Alex touched his face gently. And because I love you enough to see who you really are. And who am I, truly? A man who designs blueprints because he dreams of building homes. A man who works too hard because he cares too much. A man who pretended he needed a fake girlfriend because he was too terrified to look for a real one. Grant kissed her deeply. When they separated, they were both crying again. I love you, Alexandra Sterling. I love you, Grant Lexington, forever. 6 months later, the Lexington family estate in the Hamptons was transformed for the wedding. Fairy lights hung between the old oak trees, creating a magical glow, while arrangements of native coastal flowers decorated every table. Alex was in the guest suite, adjusting the simple yet elegant wedding dress she had chosen, the work of an emerging American designer, as she had insisted. Ready? Camilla asked, entering the room dressed as maid of honor. More ready than I've ever been for anything in my life. Even knowing Helena still hasn't completely thawed? Alex laughed. Helena will survive. And who knows? Maybe I'll grow on her eventually. Doubtful. But Grant loves you. And that is absolutely all that matters. The music began outside. A soft acoustic guitar version of an old jazz standard. Alex took a deep breath and stepped out into the garden. The wedding was small, attended only by close family and intimate friends. But when Alex saw Grant waiting for her at the improvised altar beneath a century-old oak, wearing a light-colored suit and smiling as if she were the only person in the world, she knew they needed nothing else. When she reached him, Grant took her hands and whispered, "You are breathtaking." "You don't look half bad yourself," she whispered back. The ceremony was brief, conducted by a local justice of the peace. But when it came time for the vows, Grant pulled a small, folded paper from his pocket. "Alex," he began, his voice firm but thick with emotion. "You taught me that true love isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about finding someone who helps you become the absolute best version of yourself. I promise to spend the rest of my life making you feel loved, valued, and completely heard. I promise to never again let work come before us. And I promise to build a life with you that is genuine, imperfect, and wholly real." Alex was crying when her turn came. She had no paper. She had memorized her words. "Grant, you taught me that courage isn't the absence of fear. It is having the fear and choosing to love anyway. I promise to choose you every day, in the smallest decisions and the largest ones. I promise to always come to you first when I am confused or terrified. And I promise to never again let fear make decisions for us." When the judge pronounced them husband and wife, Grant kissed Alex under a shower of rose petals, tossed by their guests, and she knew she had found her forever. Not the fairy tale kind, but the real kind, built with effort, commitment, and true fighting love. The reception lasted late into the night, with live music, local cuisine, and dancing under the stars. But the moment Alex would cherish forever was when Grant pulled her onto the empty dance floor for a final, quiet song. "Any regrets?" he asked, gently spinning her. "Only one," Alex replied. "What's that?" "That it took us so damn long to stop pretending and start truly living." Grant laughed, pulling her close. "Well, we have the rest of our lives to make up for lost time. That's a promise. That's a promise." And as they danced beneath the stars, Alex knew that some stories truly do end with forever. Not because they are perfect, but because the people in them choose every single day to make them true. The lesson: true trust is not the absence of doubt, but the active decision to choose love and ask the difficult question first, even when fear makes assumption easier.